Well, a lot of it has to do with natural resources. There's no question about it. But I think you also have a flight of fantasy on the strategic level in Washington. Just as we used to listen to people all the time say, well, we have to split Russia and China. If we can split then we can bring in Russia on our side against China. This is, what do you think this is, 1870, 1900? It's not. It's ridiculous. It's silly nonsense. Today, economic power is far more important than military power. And what we've forgotten is that as your economic strength and productivity declines, your military power falls behind.
Right with it, yeah.
So, but we're not thinking in those terms. And so, this is almost gunboat diplomacy in the style of Teddy Roosevelt. Well, we'll send a few gunboats and we'll send a battalion of Marines and we'll beat these people into submission. This is not going to work. It's a prescription for failure. But we have people strategically convincing themselves, well, we're flipping the board on Russia and China. They thought they were going to get into Venezuela. Well, they won't get there because we'll be there. I remember Nicaragua. Nobody today remembers much about Nicaragua. Back in the 80s under Reagan, there were all sorts of people, sadly, that I knew in the United States Army. Oh, this is great. Let's go into Nicaragua. And they thought, well, this is the dream of the light infantry community. We'll send in the light divisions. That's what they're there for. And a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but who is familiar with the region and thought strategically, he said, well, if I were the Soviets, I'd send a brigade of Soviet military police to direct U.S. traffic into Nicaragua. What a catastrophe that will be. We'll go there. We'll spend huge quantities of money. A lot of people will get killed. Absolutely nothing will be achieved. We've got to get back to something that we never hear anymore, which used to be popular in the medical community. It was, first, do no harm. Don't perform surgery unless it's absolutely necessary. Any surgery is by nature intrusive. As soon as it's intrusive, you risk all sorts of problems. Infection, more disease, accidents. So surgery is your last option. We've made surgery on the international level our first option. And going into Venezuela is not going to fundamentally change anything strategically in our favor. Now, the people that think they're going to get control of all the oil and natural gas, and maybe they're going to march inland and get those gold mines and emerald mines, I don't know. But if you try to do that, how long is it before suddenly some of these oil derricks begin to blow up? How long before your soldiers that are policing the area in some of the areas of Caracas start dying? In other words, you're inviting disaster. This just doesn't make any sense. And how many times have we told, oh, this will be a cakewalk? That's one of the reasons I talked about the generals. Beware of these generals. If you're president of the United States, beware of the general who walks in and says, come on, boss, we can do it. We've got it. We'll get the job done. Give us the mission. I mean, okay, who are these people? Well, I mentioned a couple. One was a general division commander in 1950 in Korea. And he predicted that once his troops landed in Korea, that the North Koreans would be so shocked and afraid they'd run away. Okay. Max Hastings, the historian that's written so many books on these things, said that the rout of the 24th Infantry Division in 1950 in Korea was so complete, it resembled the disintegration of the French in 1940 and the British in Singapore. So much for that. Then you had this man, Paul Harkins. He was Patton's G3 towards the end of the Second World War. He was a 4-star, and he was the first commander of this Military Assistance Command, Vietnam. And he said, well, we can win this war by by Christmas of 1963. The South Vietnamese troops are great. They're doing a brilliant job and so forth. Well, they had some battles with the VC and they lost. So he reported those as victories because that was the message his bosses in Washington wanted to hear. So I said, this really wasn't a defeat, a minor setback, but in truth, it was a victory. Have you heard that kind of logic before? We left triumphant from Afghanistan. We were victorious, right? And then we have this General Donahue, who was one of the architects of the triumphal retreat from Afghanistan, who says, well, we can overrun and take Kaliningrad in 2 days? 24, 48 hours. I know we can do this.
It'd be easy, I think is how he put it.
Really? What planet are these people on? And if you're president of the United States and you have people like that with 3 and 4 stars on their shoulders saying stupid remarks like that, you should be very afraid, because that doesn't pass the common sense test. I think we're hearing the same crap about Venezuela. And then if you stand up and you point to the obvious, these are the reasons why you don't want to go in there and you don't want to stay. I mean, for instance, in Iraq, one of the things I've got to give people credit for in 2002, when I talked to them down in Central Command, is that the leadership in the Army, at least at the top of Central Command, understood you don't want to stay in Iraq. If you go in there, you go in, you execute the mission, put another bunch of generals in charge, and you get out. You don't stay. Now, we all know what actually happened. But people say, well, why wasn't there a plan to occupy Iraq? Because we didn't have a spare million men to send to do it. And we didn't want to do it. And we knew it was a disastrous idea. We did it. It was a disaster. My point is, President Trump needs to sit quietly in a room and think about all of this, and then ask, what kinds of people am I dealing with? The people that tell me, oh, this is easy. This is a cakewalk. We can bully these people to our heart's content. And ask, is that really true? Is that really in our interest? Is that really what we need to do? I mean, you saw him in the Oval Office where he was asked point blank, we understand that President Maduro made an offer to you about a stake in the oil and gas industries in Venezuela. Was that not true? Oh, yes, he did. He offered everything. Well, why isn't that enough?
Yeah.
Well, that's not enough. What isn't enough? What do you want? We're in a very dangerous position right now. I don't know where we'll be in 6 months or 12 months, but if we end up where I think we're going, he's in a lot of trouble. And he's only been president for less than a year.